Yes.
So, another thing.
What?
Maybe.
Oh, yeah. I don't even. That last thing.
That is true.
Good?
Really?
All right, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, September 14th, 2022 East Long Meadow Conservation Commission meeting. At this time, I'm going to take attendance. Myself, William Arment, Michael Carabetta, Elizabeth Stoughton, Anthony Zampacini, and Nicholas Turnberg. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the August 24th, 2022 meeting. Everyone get a chance to read them? Yes. Any discussion? Like to make a motion to approve the August 24th, 2022 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, certificate of compliance. Michael, could you read that in, please? Or are you doing, Elizabeth?
No, here.
Request for partial certificate of compliance for 16 Bella Vista. Applicants Richard and Eleanor Schuman, 16 Bella Vista Drive, East Long Meadow.
I believe this one came from a letter from Mike Smith.
Yes, it did.
Hold on 1 second. Mike says that it all complies. Entertain a motion to approve the partial certificate of compliance for 16 Bella Vista Drive.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, request for determination of applicability. Mike, can you read that in, please?
Request for determination of applicability. The wrong one here.
No, that was right. No, right there.
Oh, thank you. At Tanglewood Drive and Lennox Circle, for whether the work described is subject to local jurisdiction. Applicant is Mass Electric, 40 Sylvan Road, Waltham, Mass.
All right, looks like they're just gonna be installing new conduit and stuff down the street and a couple of junction boxes off onto people's front yards. Does anyone have any conversation about this?
I don't, I think it looks straightforward.
Okay, so do we have the negative determination?
Yep, right here.
It was a 3.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve a -3 determination on the RDA for, was it Western Mass Electric?
Yes.
For Western Mass Electric, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next on the agenda is the notice of intent for 330 Chestnut Street. Michael, can you read that in?
Other side.
This is a notice of intent for 330 Chestnut Street, Assessors Parcel ID 18-38-0, for the construction of a warehouse building and associated site improvements, subject to the Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.58. Applicants are East Long Meadow Redevelopers, LLC, 1260 Stelton Road, Piscataway, New Jersey.
Rob? Go ahead, sir.
Rob,
Can I do that?
you can't put that paper, see that other thing there, it's a microphone.
What's
That's
that?
my microphone. Under that paper, onto your left.
Oh, sorry. Hi, folks.
No, right there. Up on
That one of the thing you gotta.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Got it, okay. Good evening, I'm Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates. We are the proponents, engineering firm. We have prepared a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission, fall within the jurisdiction. Wait, let me start again. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. So I'm Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates. I'm here this evening representing the proponents. We have filed a notice of intent because a portion of our project falls within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission and Mass DEP under the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as under the local bylaw. There's a lot of information to cover tonight. It might be hard to hear me, it might be hard to see. I'm happy to If somebody raises their hand, stop, slow down, communicate a little bit better, do my best, okay? So if you don't yell at me, that'd be great, but if you can, if you do have a question, I certainly want to make sure everybody hears what we have to say tonight. So I'm going to work off the plan behind me. I wasn't sure what we had for setup today, so it might be a little bit difficult. Can you see, everybody see that on the screen? Okay. So to the top of the page or up here, I don't have a mouse, I'm doing this with the laptop here. So this is Chestnut Street. The community that most of you are from is probably a stone's throw, maybe 600, 700, 800 feet across this wetland resource area in stream here. That's the reason for the jurisdiction. And then my plan, just so everybody knows, this is the north arrow. So top of the page is north, bottom south, west, and east, okay? So the gray footprint that you see is a proposed, it's a little bit over 500,000 square foot distribution warehouse facility that's proposed. That is generally speaking within the same footprint, obviously, sorry, thank you. That's generally, elbow up. Generally speaking, that's within the same footprint of the existing structure. It certainly is generally within the same footprint of the existing structure and the additional impervious surface that exists out there now. So the reason why we're here this evening is, again, back to the wetland on that left side of the plan, or that would be your west. There's a perennial stream. A perennial stream in Massachusetts is regulated as a river and has with it a 200-foot riverfront area measured either side of that perennial stream, measured from the mean annual high water line of that stream. So we have a 200-foot riverfront area, which is actually a wetland resource area. It's not a buffer zone, okay? You've heard of wetlands, you've heard of buffer zones. So wetlands are resource areas, so is a riverfront area. So it's highly regulated. Very little in general you can do in a riverfront area under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Rivers Protection Act that was promulgated in, I think, 96. So there are some grandfathering provisions for that we can talk about, but generally speaking, there's not a lot we can do in there. There's also a bordering vegetated wetland along that stream. That bordering vegetated wetland is a wetland resource area. Very little can be done in a wetland resource area. The wetlands, a bordering vegetated wetland, generally, you may, if the commission were to allow you, serve up to 5,000 square feet of wetlands, but you have to replicate, and there's a whole bunch of other performance standards that you have to go through. Over 5,000 square feet, you start getting into a whole nother slew of regulations that you would have to adhere to. So that said, those are the two general resource areas that we're dealing with on that western side of the property. Our proposed project is generally out of those, including the stormwater. So there's a couple subtleties in what we're doing. Really, from a conservation standpoint, despite the size of the project, and I understand the concerns about the project, but despite the size of the project, it's pretty minimal in terms of actual wetland impacts. So I'll go to this plan because it's a little easier for me to explain. So again, the western side of the property, if you can see this, and I apologize if you can't, there is this granulated for this pattern here. This is the mean annual high water line and the bordering vegetated wetland offset from that. So in the green area, you probably can only see the green area. You probably can't see the black lines in here. But in this green area, that's generally where the resource areas are. This is just about along the 200-foot riverfront area. You'll see that all of our proposed work is out of those wetland resource areas. The amount of work that we have in the actual resource areas is limited to the front of the site, or the northern portion of the site, along Chestnut. If you're familiar with that wooded area where the culvert is, this is the culvert location. So there's an existing, right now, there's an existing driveway right about where my thumb would be. That exists there. So if you're familiar with that, we are actually moving that entrance away from the resource area by about, rough and tough, let's say 40 to 50 feet. So as we do that, we'll be restoring that area. So we're improving over existing conditions. We are certainly, this project was created prior to 1996. So as you're aware, with the, under 310 CMR 1058, I think it's 5, which is the redevelopment provisions under Wetlands Protection Act, is, you know, there's criteria, and I actually believe Attorney Bill, who you hired, put in an excerpt from the Wetlands Protection Act. We certainly meet those riverfront area standards and arguably exceed them. There was, just so you know, as far as the process, and I think obviously the commission knows this, when we submit a file on this, we have hundreds of hours into something like this ahead of time, and we submit this paperwork. It's based on the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act. When we submit that work, it's through what I had called a notice of intent. That's the permit application that we submitted. So once that's submitted, the state reviews it. They do a review of that and they make sure it's complete. They're not making a decision. They're not the decision-making body. Obviously, the Conservation Commission is. But they do review it for completeness. And they issue what's called a file number form. And they can comment if they have questions or they think that there certain suggestions should be made. The Western Regional Office on Dwight Street in Springfield will comment. So we had 3 or 4 comments, which were very minor, and I can go through those this evening, but we had addressed those, and they were generally related to riverfront area and making sure that mitigation and some planting details were covered. So we've addressed the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act. We have been issued a file number, which is the first thing that the commission needs to make a decision. So we do have that file number that was issued by DEP. We have responded to those minor DEP comments. This afternoon, or maybe it was late morning, I did receive a letter from your attorney, Mr. Pill, who I'm very familiar with and respect. And I have a response to that, which I provided to the commission. I think Mr. Roulier has a copy for Mr. Pill. And there's some very basic key items here. I know there are a lot of questions and concerns related to this project. Just want to clarify, as Will had mentioned, this is related to conservation only tonight, the Conservation Commission. I know you have concerns about traffic. You might have concerns about other planning related items. Those are certainly going to be addressed. There is a meeting coming up at the planning board. I just want everybody to know that that is a place for you to vet your concerns. Obviously, your attorney will make sure you understand that process. But generally speaking, I believe tonight we have a wetland line that has previously been determined, one. We have a file number from DEP with minimal comments, which we've already addressed and revised our plans accordingly. We do have comments from DPW and the other 3 or 4 departments within the town that would normally comment. We received those through the planning department. So those items are all arguably addressed, and there was nothing in those comments that we received that would have any impact on the layout or the grading or the drainage approach that we have. So I'd like to maybe stop there for a second through the chair, see if there's any specific questions for the commission that the commission has related to what I've said so far. And then I also have a response to Mr. Pill's letter that I would like to go through.
Yeah, I think if we could go through some questions. Great. Here for the board. Just correct me if I'm wrong, though, the limit of work line will not be farther than the existing asphalt that's already there, correct? You're not extending the asphalt in westerly direction at all?
The asphalt, the comparison of the asphalt, I will have to find on my plan sheet that I can, which I will for you. I guess one of the things that I'll say is that the general footprint is the same. I'll confirm that, whether or not it's a little bit closer, a little bit farther. I can tell you that there was not a stormwater basin here previous. So, but again, all of that work is out of Conservation Commission jurisdiction. It's all well over 200 feet from the annual high. So really, from a subject matter point of view, we have basically this area where my hand is here. That's really what's currently. And I do have some comments related to the attorney letter.
So in the only area that's under jurisdiction, you're actually going farther away anyways, which I heard you say that in the speech. So, all right.
Yeah. And we also, and one of the things I will say when I go through the letter is that stormwater was brought up. So stormwater, as you're aware, jurisdiction over stormwater falls with DEP and potentially sometimes under the bylaw. In this particular case, we don't have any new point source discharges that would trigger a DEP review of stormwater or the local bylaw review of stormwater. And I can get into more of that detail, at the appropriate time.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do not.
All right, do you want to get ahead of the curve here and discuss the response to the attorney's letter first before we open it as a public hearing?
That'd be great.
I just wanted a copy.
Gotcha, good.
Thank you.
Yep. So a couple of things. So I received a letter this morning from Attorney Pill related to the conservation filing in general. He was nice enough to put together some key points, table of contents, so to speak. I'll go through some key points for the commission to consider in relation to that letter. We took some time to really look at that, both myself and Philippe Crevo, the PE on the project that designed the stormwater system. So I'll just paraphrase, but I'll go to item one, bullet one, we'll call it. It's not number one, but bullet one.
Could you move that mic up? Sorry to do it.
I gotta tie my arm up. Sorry about that, sir. Okay, so item number one, the local wetland bylaw only has, believe it or not, only has jurisdiction in areas within 100 feet of the wetland or stream. If you look at the jurisdiction section under the bylaw, it actually doesn't regulate, and I'm not sure why, but it doesn't regulate the outer 100 feet of the riverfront area. So as mentioned previous, the point sources are all outside of jurisdiction. The area in front that we are dealing with, really the subject area, doesn't have any new point sources, and there's some water from the entrance, which is now farther away from the wetland. That sheet flows to the street where there's an existing catch basin. So that's item one. All the components of the stormwater system are out of the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act and the local wetland bylaw. I just said that, but I'm saying that again. Next one. The proposed stormwater management system is utilizing the existing drainage outfall. The proposed stormwater management system does not introduce any new point source discharges and does not have a point source discharge within the bylaw, local jurisdiction, and therefore cannot be regulated locally. Next item, the stormwater management system has been designed to the standards set forth in Mass DEP Stormwater Management Handbook. It utilizes TR 20 and TR 55, as mentioned in the letter from your attorney. However, there's a program called, the software program, which is industry called HydroCAD. And HydroCAD uses that as the base for its modeling, but is much more sophisticated. Hydraulic analysis was completed using industry standard HydroCAD software, which employs other advanced modeling techniques. HydroCAD also adds other capabilities that have no equivalent in TR 55, such as hydraulics, exfiltration calculations, and a range of other features. The use of TP40, so these numbers aren't going to mean anything to you. TP40 is a rainfall intensity chart atlas. So everybody hears the 100-year storm, right? You probably heard of the 100-year flood. They're two completely different things. Most people don't know that. The 100-year storm, does anybody know how many inches in a 24-hour period the 100-year storm is?
TP40 and the data I say you should use give different numbers. It's largely a matter of the analysis, and the MACC, the Mass Association of Conservation Commission Handbook, topic 3, by the way.
I didn't mean to invite you to talk.
What I'm saying, Rob, is there's no, you asked the question and I'm trying to answer it, sir. There is no one answer. It depends on which analytical program, and if you look in topic 3, I think it's 3.1 through 3.5 of the MACC handbook.
I'll go,
it's
all right,
clear.
Mr. Pill, I'll go
all right.
for the amendment.
All right, yeah.
Attorney Pill, I'm sorry.
Hold on one second, sir. I'm not, let him finish and then I'll.
I'm sorry, I was just,
No,
I apologize.
and that's
I'm
fine.
just trying to answer his question.
No,
It's not a one-number question. Thank you.
No.
So TP40, as I was mentioning, is a rainfall intensity chart or atlas. And it describes what the intensity is in this area or other areas. So, if you live in New England or if you live somewhere else, it changes throughout the states, right? So, on this atlas, just as an example, a 100-year storm is 6.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. It's a lot of rain. Okay. What was being stated in the letter was cut and pasted, and arguably makes sense that it would be, from a seminar that was provided recently on climate change. So while it's interesting, and it's not necessarily right or wrong, and there's a lot of data that suggests that there's a lot of different data that should be considered for rainfall intensity. Right now, as it exists, we have to design to the DEP standard, which is provided in the Wetlands Protection Act, specifically through the Stormwater Management Handbook. So I will give you the exact location. And I apologize, I'm moving my mic again. I'll give you the exact location. So TP40 Rainfall Intensity Atlas is required under the Hydraulic Handbook for Conservation Commissioners, which is available on the web, and Mass DEP Stormwater Management Handbook. The Hydraulic Handbook for Conservation Commissioners states, and I quote, stormwater policy requires the use of TP40 Atlas. So we cannot actually use a different atlas or different rainfall intensity. Now, it might be a good idea. It might be a good suggestion, something that actually local communities I've seen in Massachusetts are going to. For example, Southwick, I believe, went to a rainfall intensity which has, I think, 11 inches of rain in a 24-hour period that they're having you to design to, but that's not currently the standard for Mass DEP. So we are required, if we want to get a file number, we're required to design to that standard based on the guidance that we've been provided. Next item, the proposed stormwater management system is designed to handle peak discharge rates from the storm events up to and including the 100-year storm. I think there was some confusion in the letter from the attorney. We did the hydrologic analysis up to and including the 100-year storm. So very specific storm events. So for example, the 10-year storm or the 100-year storm, they have different intensities based on that TP40 data that we talked about. So we're required to design for different storm events. When those storm events get designed for, that information is provided in our stormwater report with our notice of intent. So all of that needs to be based on the standards provided by Mass DEP. So the system has been designed to handle up to and including the 100-year storm. The confusion in reading the stormwater report, which I believe the attorneys had, is that it very specifically states under the hydraulic, not hydrologic, but hydraulic section, they talk about the 25-year storm being the design storm. That's for the conveyance pipe. That's for the closed piping. That's for the structures and the piping. That's also based on subdivision standard, which is the standard for the town. So as I go through this, if you, the next item is, as stated in the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook for projects subject to jurisdiction under the Wetlands Protection Act, the issuing authority relies on TR 20 and TR 50. Now that's a quote from the handbook. The next item, Hydraulic Handbook for Conservation Commissioners states, storm drain systems are this is back to the closed system, the actual pipe sizes, states that storm drain systems are typically designed for the 2 and 10-year storm. So we designed for the 25-year storm in our system. It says it's typically designed for the 2 and 10 frequency storm events. The appropriate storm events may be specified by the local bylaw, which it is, subdivision standard. Your project by Mr. Rulli, a beautiful project, was designed based on the 100-year storm. I know the people that did it. I know the stormwater report that was done. I'm well aware of how these projects work. Everybody has to meet the same standard. So to give you an example, your community was designed to up to and including the 100-year storm. You have to handle that water. We have to do the same. So back to this letter. So the town of East Long Meadow subdivision rules and regulations state that the drainage component be designed for the 25-year storm event. As designed, drainage system pipe network has been sized based on that event, and the peak discharge rates have been analyzed and designed for storm events up to and including the 100-year storm. So to clarify, all of the questions and concerns that were raised in that letter are either not necessarily applicable to our project, or we can't change our design to meet future climate change and anticipated climate change, or even current climate change, until DEP decides to do so. Right now, we're designing to the standard. Again, we have a project under conservation that, in my opinion, is a very de minimis amount of work in the actual buffer zones and resource areas, does not include any stormwater, and the commission is familiar with the wetland line, so as far as, there was some suggestion about setting aside $25,000 in the letter and doing extensive peer reviews. I'll just let the commission, digest our information, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Levesque?
No, not at this time.
All right, so before I open it up to the floor for discussion, I just want to be clear that we are here to discuss the conservation issue that we're addressing. And I understand everyone's concerns. I respect everyone's concerns and opinions and everything. But I will have to stop you if we don't stay focused on what we're here for. That would be more for the planning board, when it would be a lot of your concerns. So if someone would like to speak, we're going to allow it. I'd like to try and keep the conservation questions down to a few minutes per person or something like that, so we can just carry this meeting going. But once again, I mean no disrespect to anyone, but we are only here for conservation questions, okay? So I'm just going to say that ahead of time. So I would like to.
Motion.
One microphone.
Oh, and we have one microphone over here. For anyone who would like to speak can come down and talk to it.
Yeah, please use it.
Motion.
Oh, you have,
Capture.
oh, yeah, you have to use it because it's for it to be on the Zoom.
Open.
Okay, so we're going to make a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Does anyone like to speak? Go ahead, sir.
So I can't speak from there, I have to speak from the back.
As long as you speak into a microphone.
At the floor?
And I think I understand, in being overly quiet, one thing about a lawyer is we seldom are accused of being too quiet or speaking too softly. The first thing, of course, is, I'm sorry, my name is Michael Pill. If any of you are old enough to remember the expression, you're a real pill, I guess that applies to me. There's times when I have to admit that, yes, I'm a lawyer, but I'm proud to say my children have grown up to do honest work. When I see some people waving, you can't hear me? Now you can? Okay, the first thing is I certainly appreciate Rob Levesque giving me a memorandum. Obviously, what's handed to me, thank you. Thank you, sir.
You're
Okay.
very welcome.
What's handed to me at the beginning of the meeting, I haven't had time to read. He's raised a number of legal issues that I want to research and respond. I certainly disagree, based on my past experience, that somehow the 65-year-old TP40, which in no way reflects decades of climate change and the realities of our current climate, is the only thing that can be used legally, especially with East Long Meadows Wetlands bylaw. Now, those are legal issues, and you don't deal with those off the top of the head. So the first thing, what I have to do, as a matter of fundamental fairness and due process, I hope you would continue this hearing for a reasonable time so I can submit a supplemental memorandum. The memorandum I submitted was because I realize your time is precious, and I didn't want to take up a whole lot of time going through 18 pages, single space. So I'm not going to wade through and repeat. Now, that's for the legal issues Rob has raised. And in terms of legal authority, obviously, I didn't expect Rob's letter, it was handed to me, although I appreciate it. By analogy, in Mark Bobrowski's Handbook of Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law, there is a section in there, and again, if you continue the hearing, I can provide that to you if you wish, which makes it clear that where new information is presented at the hearing, as a matter of fundamental fairness and due process, the hearing should be continued so that opponents of that information have a fair opportunity to respond. That's for the legal stuff, okay? Now, for the technical stuff, this is why I respectfully submit, and it's in the memorandum, I hope you will exercise your authority at the applicant's expense to hire your own experts. I have both worked with and in opposition to Rob and Levesque Associates, but one thing I've learned, all the decades in earning all my gray hair, somehow, every objective scientific, certified, licensed expert always comes to a conclusion that supports who they're working for. I don't fault anybody for that. That's their job, okay? A peer reviewer that you can choose at the applicant's expense works for you, will address your concerns, and will give you an unvarnished, impartial peer review of this process. And as I said, I certainly disagree about the potential limitations of your authority under your local bylaw, okay? You've got Rob working for the developer, you've got me working for the opponents. I don't claim, as I noted, there to be a wetland scientist or an environmental scientist, but you have the power to hire those at the applicant's expense. And I will deal with the legal issues. And by the way, you know, have you ever hired your own peer review people?
I've never been part of a board that hired a
Pardon?
peer review. I have never been part of a board that had a peer review.
Okay, well, talk to your town attorney. Is that Mr. Malik?
Who is it?
Jesse Belcher-Tiny.
Okay.
Chapter 44, section 53G, it's in the memo, and you certainly, because I believe the town has accepted that, has the authority to hire your own experts of your own choosing. And by the way, I'm trying to be fair here. Rob says what you can't do. I'm going to tell you what you can do. If you want your own lawyer, the best person I can think of, am I mucking up again? Pardon?
Microphone up to your mouth.
Okay, I'll do my best, but they're the ones who need to hear me. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to buttonhole me after the meeting, I'll be happy to fill you in. McGregor and Associates in Boston. Gregor McGregor was the first lawyer for the DEP. He has a brilliant partner named Nathaniel Stevens. I have no connection with him. He's the best wetlands lawyer I know. And certainly under Chapter 44, Section 53G, you can not only hire engineer, environmental scientist, wetlands expert, you can also hire an independent wetlands specialist attorney. And there may be others, and I assume the commission or some of you are MACC members like I am? Okay, there's some who advertise there. And I'm sure if you talk to the people at MACC, they can help you find independent experts. What I'm suggesting is, I'm not necessarily asking that you take what I say at face value. I'm certainly asking that you not take what the developer's advocate says at face value, but you get your own independent experts. And that fits in. In other words, I'm not just asking you to take a little more time just so I can respond. I'm asking so that you can get your own independent review. And I'd also respectfully submit, given what you can see, and I suspect this is an unusual level of interest, and I'm trying to be frank, whatever decision you make, and obviously I hope you don't approve it, but if you do, right now your choice is you're going to take me at face value, you're going to take the developer's advocate at face value, as opposed to your own independent peer review, legal, engineering, wetlands, environmental science experts. And I'm also trying to be frank. What that also means is there won't be much point in us trying to appeal it, because as I'm sure you also know, the local bylaw goes to the Superior Court under certiorari, which frankly is a freaking nightmare, as opposed to the state wetlands regs, which are significantly weaker and go through first the superseding, then the adjudicatory level, and then to the Superior Court. In any event, I appreciate you letting me talk. I've tried not to take up too much time, but I do hope you will both hire your own independent experts, Chapter 44, Section 53G, and that you'll afford me the opportunity. I mean, if Rob's got me dead to rights, lawyer's maxim, when all else fails, once in a while you have to admit the other side is right. But having been handed that memo at the beginning of this meeting, I cannot make that determination now. Thank you for your time. And I will say, can everybody hear me now? Please take to heart what the chair said to you. I don't know how many times I've been to meetings, whether on the developer side or the opponent side. Nothing's relevant here other than the conservation and wetlands issues under the local bylaw and the state regs. Anything else you're wasting your time and theirs, and he has every right to shut you down. So please do try, it's not a courtroom, but there is that limitation of relevance. And over my decades, I don't know how many times when something becomes a hot potato like this one is, I have heard Conservation Commission people just sort of slap their foreheads at the suffering they have to go through trying to make that point. So simply as a courtesy, please keep in mind what he said, because on that point, I think I agree 100%. It has to be kept to the wetlands issues. Thank you. And thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Yeah. Would anyone else like to speak? Can you come over to this microphone, please? Thank you.
Take me a few minutes, I'm old.
Take your time. They still have to have, they're still gonna require a stormwater report on the property.
From DPW, right?
All that has nothing to do with us. Want to make sure I was right on that.
Good evening.
Can you please state your name?
My name is Mary Hurley. I live at 15 Fields Drive in East Long Meadow. I'm one of the residents of the community that's pretty close to here and to the proposed site. I've never met Attorney Green. I've never met the gentleman from Levesque, but I spent 20 years in a courtroom listening to experts. And a lot of times it boils down to a battle of the experts. And in this particular case, you have an advantage as a commission to do extra. Judges don't get to hire experts to help them understand. The community that I live in, roughly, this is a home, this is a thing we spend the most money on. And I'm gonna say that that community right now, if you were to put all the houses and all the homeowners together, is, as a community, worth somewhere between probably $50 and $55 million. That's our investment in East Long Meadow. And I do not think that Attorney Green's request is the least bit unreasonable and certainly not unnecessary. I believe it is necessary because you can believe him, but who knows? If you paid me $1 million, I could not tell you what the regulations of the Conservation Commission is. If you paid me $1 million, I couldn't tell you what the wetland laws are. But I know that that's the most valuable investment I have. And I'm asking you to require the developer who's in this to make money, to require them to pay a $25,000 fee to let you have your own representative, an independent body that doesn't have a horse in the race. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the job you do.
Thank you very much.
Ain't always easy. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? No.
No, I think it's just an arbitrary number.
Very tired. Keep watching the TV. In person.
My name is Art Ball. My wife Carolyn and I live at 5 Clover Lane. We are butters to the project. Going through the documentation that was provided, in particular the stormwater program, I came across things that I found troubling in terms of the technical analysis. In particular, if you were to look at the measurements for the depth of the groundwater, they're given on in the plans where all the test pits, the 25 test pits were put in. The measurements are taken in May of this year in the period of extreme drought. If you look at the values in for the development Basin 3. Their test pits, I believe it's 14 through 25 are located there. And what I tried to do is look at the height of the measurement from the original position down to the groundwater table. Then look at it again in drawings C301 through 304. This is with the basins in place. So now you've got a reduction in terms of the height. Then we get to the third point, which is the installation of the under drains. And that seems to be a little bit iffy. I couldn't get out of the documentation whether there are going to be under drains or not. If you look at the drawings, it says under drain typical. If you look at the section at the end of the plans where it shows what an under drain cross section should look like, it says for permitting only, not for construction. So it's never really defined how many or the volume of under drains that are going to be put in place. But nonetheless, you take the depth of that under drain, you put it in the bottom of basin 3, and the numbers to me come out at the groundwater table now is only like a foot or two at most beneath that. Now, if we go now and also looking throughout all those drawings at all the locations of the test pits, I could find no reference to any monitoring well or any piezometer being installed. Generally, you put these in and you watch what happens over time, monitor over a period of time the rise and fall of the groundwater table. Now, these owners had this property for 2 years, so they've had plenty of time to define what's going on. But if we now go back and look at it and wait for a wet season to come in, there's most certainly going to be recharge in that area being so close to the wetlands as it is. If that groundwater table comes up a foot or two, those basins are going to be underwater. So you're not going to be able to distribute water at the rates that they're talking about. This is a technical issue that I think you folks ought to investigate thoroughly. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Rob, would you like to address that?
Thank you, sir. Those are all really good questions. I'm glad you're looking at our work in detail. I'll give you all of those answers, actually. First of all, I will reiterate that the stormwater that we've designed is not subject to jurisdiction under the act or under the local bylaw. But that said, we still design it to the same standards. The Mass DEP standards came out in 2008. So to your question about groundwater, in Massachusetts, there is actually certain individuals, professional engineers, sanitarians, that can become soil evaluators. So someone who would be out on site determining seasonal high groundwater and soil types has to go through very specific training. In addition to being a civil engineer or a sanitarian, and sometimes surveyors, they can go through additional training to become a soil evaluator. Those soil evaluators are not looking at standing water. They're looking at redoxomorphic features in the soil. So rust-colored modeling, as the water goes up and down in the soil test pits, there's rusting, arguably, that happens. I'm oversimplifying it, but so they're looking for that modeling in the side of these test pits. We don't do monitoring wells because it's not how they have us do it. They have us dig test pits, literal, excavation pits, get down into those pits and look at that soil profile. To the gentleman's question, the DEP standards require that we design our stormwater systems to a minimum of 2 feet above seasonal high groundwater. We have a very specifically trained professional that looks at the soil types. Obviously, if there's standing water in the hole or something like that, we're obviously noting that. That's all noted in our stormwater report. It's all noted in our test pit logs that were conducted and recorded by our soil evaluator. So just to clarify, we're not looking at groundwater, and the changes in weather patterns and drought conditions does not change where those high water marks are. As you can imagine, for years and years and years, that water's been coming up and down. So that seasonal high water mark is a redoxomorphic feature that we're looking for in the soil. It's not your groundwater as it comes up and down. If you have water in your basement or don't have water in your basement year to year, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking at the high water mark historically, which affects changes in the soil that we can determine based on the training of our soil evaluators. Again, no monitoring wells. And then there was a question about the 2 years. So in addition to not only what we have for test pit information, we do have monitoring wells. There was environmental work that was done by O'Reilly, Talbot, and Oken over the years. We have information there. We also have information from the basement of this facility that exists there now. There's a 500 and something thousand square foot facility there. There's a basement in that facility. It's got water in it. It's been pumped out. It gets pumped out. So we're intimately familiar with the water conditions and the site conditions. We're generally going to raise the site slightly for the building. So we're not going below any of these criteria that DEP sets forth for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Sir?
Thank you. I am looking at page 52 of your notice of intent.
Can you just state your name, please?
Sorry, Ralph Page. Closer, Ralph. A little closer, is that better done? Closer you can get. Okay. On page 52, the very last page of your notice of intent, it looks to me like roughly 17,000 square feet, 4,000 and 13,000 feet converted either from impervious surface or lawn area to a natural vegetated cover. Could you explain a little bit what you mean by natural vegetated cover? Are we looking at larger trees and all, which will help shade and protect that area? Are you looking at little shrubs? Are you looking?
And I believe there was a comment in the file number form from DEP about the same. I think they wanted more specifics, and I do believe we've updated the plan probably since depending on which, when you originally saw the notice. But there was a comment from DEP about how we're going to handle that, plantings, et cetera. And I believe it's on our plan. So it's woody landscape shrubs, obviously native. They can't be, invasive. They're not ornamental. It's natural in form and character.
So would I be safe in saying it's going to look like you've extended the woods?
Exactly. It's not a manicured area at all. That's not the intent. The intent is to mitigate and improve over existing conditions under the Rivers Protection Act.
And you're roughly, you said, moving the driveway about 40 feet further away.
Correct.
The street.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Rob.
Yep.
Is that it? Oh, sir, please, just state your name, please, before you start talking. Thank you.
I'm Dick Leopold, I live at 375 Chestnut Street. My question is simply, with 100 bays, and we understand 150 parking places for 18-wheelers, how do you prevent the oil spillage and the gasoline spillage that is notoriously associated with such big trucks from leaching into the watershed, into all of the wetlands?
Thank you. Another great question. If this was in the 70s, you probably have a major concern on your hands. But under the Wetlands Protection Act and the stormwater regulations that I mentioned earlier, which were updated in 2008, they've incorporated a number of safeguards in the requirements. I'll go through some of the basics, but the first and foremost, they've introduced something that they call a treatment train. So in order to get approved for or have compliance under the Wetlands Protection Act and the stormwater standards, they required that we meet 10 specific standards. A few of those standards are related to water quality, from a water quality standpoint, this treatment train that they require is essentially a closed system or an open system that treats the water as it goes through the system. So in this particular case, I don't think that's me. In this particular case, everybody's familiar with what a catch basin is, where the water goes into. So the first order of business is a deep sump catch basin. So when the water goes in, there's a 4-foot sump typically at the bottom of that catch basin. Also in that catch basin, there's usually an outlet pipe. Okay, so that pipe that goes out, they have these hoods that have been designed. They're plastic hoods that have been designed to prevent suspended solids from leaving that catch basin. So floatables such as oil or some of the grit and, some of the other floatables that would be in there arguably are given time to settle out. Okay, so that's the first safeguard. The next safeguard is they want us to do those offline. So no longer do we have catch basins that are in line that can grab other sediment and other floatables, et cetera. So that's offline. So that pipe, that trunk line, then continues typically on and collects these other deep sump catch basins. And then from there, there's a water quality unit. So these water quality units are designed to remove total suspended solids, and there's some arguments over what does what and how much of the total suspended solids are removed. But generally speaking, it's a vortechnic unit that settles out the same floatables that I'm talking about. So it's the second layer. And then the third layer is typically at these basins themselves, would be what we call a forebay. And, if you think of these earthen basins, they're very shallow, they're not deep in this particular case. These earthen basins have a forebay, which is this area where the outlet pipe comes into, and it collects whatever additional sediment could possibly be in the stormwater. And then those areas are maintained. Now, all of these things that are incorporated into the drainage system are regulated. There are very specific short-term and long-term maintenance requirements and agreements. There's illicit discharge statements that are provided. We cannot get approved and shouldn't be approved if we don't meet all of the standards that are required. So they're very high water quality standards. In addition to that, the operators of these facilities are required also to have spill prevention plans. So if something did spill, let's be realistic, things spill, right? So if something did spill and landed on, it's bituminous, it's asphalt. So it lands on the asphalt, it would either go to a catch basin that has these deep sumps, or if it was something in anything, just about anything these days is reportable, they would probably call in a company like Clean Harbors or somebody like that, and they would come in, and these companies have the money and the wherewithal to do it the right way. They come in and they have somebody clean up the spill, it gets reported to the proper authorities as necessary, and then they move on. So there are operational protections in place. There are very specific stormwater protections in place. The Conservation Commission has the ability under their order of conditions, which is the permit that's issued, to further condition certain things. In this particular case, though, while it's still designed to those standards and we meet all those standards, it's not necessarily jurisdictional under this particular situation. So it's designed, it's a belts and suspenders approach as is required. So the short answer is that, we have all those safeguards in place. So all of those requirements, when an order of conditions would be issued, would be memorialized in what we submitted. So if we have a permit, we have to adhere to all of those. And then it's, to be totally honest, it's something that the owners or the tenants need to keep on and make sure that they don't have a problem. But there are huge fines and fees associated with spills. In this particular case, you have motor vehicles, which, given the amount of material they handle or have within them, the spills that you potentially would be concerned about would be minimal. This is not going to be an oil, it's not gonna have oil. We're not gonna have oil trucks. There's no propane trucks. This is for distribution for, typical parcel service type of thing. So. Hopefully that helps.
Who is it? Who's this built for?
So I can tell you exactly what I've been told, whether you want to believe me or not. And I've actually asked the same question. I would say the best answer I can give you is I believe it's on spec for an internet commerce company. And this is directly from the owner, so who will actually, I believe, be at the planning board, so we could ask him directly. I'm just a local guy they hired. But I'll tell you that, it's designed the same, everyone says Amazon, right? It's designed the same way. I mean, all these facilities are generally the same. So I don't know who it will be in the end. I really don't. I have not been told, but I have absolutely been told it's on spec.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak? Make a motion to close the pub.
Or anything on Zoom?
Is there anyone on Zoom that wants to talk?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Good evening. I just have a simple question regarding the basins. I'm assuming we're having some typical above ground storage basins, retention or detention basins, but has there been any consideration given to using an underground basin, which eliminates what I call mosquito factory above ground basins where there's some standing water?
Through the chair.
I guess, sir.
Hello, by the way.
Hi,
nice
Rob.
to see you. We did actually consider that. As you can imagine, yard space for a facility like this is important. What happens is, this is back to the item I mentioned with the gentleman that was asking about stormwater. So I had mentioned a 2-foot separation from seasonal high groundwater that's required. So if we were to do a subsurface system, not only do you need that 2 feet, but plus the subsurface system itself, whether it be Coltech chambers or concrete, aero concrete chambers or something like that, you would need approximately 7 foot cross section, which from groundwater would require us to bring our surface of our parking lot, let's say approximately, I don't remember the exact, but it would bring it well out of the ground and render it fairly infeasible to do. So not to mention that we had the area to do this with these basins outside of the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. So we opted to do that in turn for a little less yard space.
Okay. And my other question was this, did you redelineate this? Because I know we approved a delineation years ago for this. Was there a redelineation done and a site visit by the commission?
It was refreshed.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good seeing you, Rob.
You too.
Would anyone else like to speak? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, back to the board. Does anyone have any comments?
Rob, you said this was presented to the state at the state level?
Can I speak?
Yes. I'm asking you.
Yeah, so procedure, so I just want to make sure procedurally. Yeah, so we did submit a response back to Mass DEP. They typically don't send us a second response.
Okay.
Depending on the circuit writer. In this particular case, I think it's actually an analyst. that wrote the letter. But yeah, so we've responded, given them the information, and.
Okay, you said they had a few comments?
They, yeah, initially they did, there were, I think, 3 or 4 comments, and they were related to, as you've probably seen, they were related to, the plantings and the mitigation that we're proposing in that area that Mr. Page had mentioned.
Okay. All right, so currently, there's no drainage on that site whatsoever. Very minimal.
No, I'm sorry.
No, there's nothing to catch the runoff from that parking lot, or as it exists right now, or very minimal.
There's a drainage system there now.
Is it, I'm assuming it doesn't come anywhere close to meeting today's standards.
No.
So anything we do from here moving forward would be an improvement.
A drastic improvement.
Okay.
From a water quality standpoint, for sure. And we're also attenuating flows, which they were not doing before. They were basically collecting and letting it rip.
Okay. Yep. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I don't have any questions.
I'm all set. So, as far as the peer review, unfortunately, under our jurisdiction on this project, I don't think a peer review is necessary, because where we are under jurisdiction, we're actually improving the area and moving farther away. So I can understand the frustration with everyone in this room, and I can respect it. I truthfully can. But from where we sit as a conservation board, I don't believe we have the right full obligation here. We have to do what's right for the project, and they're not asking for something that's making the situation worse for the property from a conservation standpoint, in my eyes. So I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
I would agree with that. I think in the scheme of things, this is a very small project compared to some things that have been presented to us previously where we've not done peer reviews. As a member of the planning board, yes, ma'am. Yep. As a member of the planning board and this board, we've had many instances to work with Rob and his company. And one of the emails Mr. Pill sent today, I read, the engineer, the property owner, they have a right to do things in a right way or be subject to litigation at a later date. So with that being said, I don't think anything would be presented that would, on their behalf, that would cause them anguish somewhere else down the line. So if we were crossing a river, if we're putting a bridge in, something super substantial, then yes, I would say maybe we do need a second set of eyes on this. But with the minimal things that we're talking about here, I would say a peer review would not be necessary.
I also want to reiterate too, that the underground water, the catch basins and all of that is not under our jurisdiction. And neither is the retention basin, none of that. It's all outside of our jurisdiction on this project. Now, I'm going to assume that at the planning board meeting, though, these same questions are going to come up. I don't know if there's a civil engineer who's been hired or not for any of this. I'm sure there will be a presentation there. That falls under their jurisdiction, not ours. And I understand it's water, but it's not. The only part of this that is under our jurisdiction is that driveway entrance. So the rest of it all falls out of our jurisdiction. And that's why I don't mean to disappoint anyone, and I don't mean to be disrespectful or to not hear everyone in this room. But that's all we are allowed to talk about in reality, is that driveway entrance being moved farther from the street. And they're gonna plant back and make the woods bigger. So as far as from a conservation standpoint, they're improving our area. Okay, so that's, I just wanted to state that. Does anyone else have anything else? Do we make a motion to approve it? We're gonna close it first.
You already closed.
Okay.
You just have to. Motion to approve.
So I would make a motion to approve the notice of intent based on the information given.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Sorry. Yeah, we did.
5-minute recess, or you want to wait?
No, nothing's
You have
wrong.
the agenda, you have the agenda. Like,
Yeah.
We're gonna get the vote to adjourn. You mentioned the vote.
We still have an agenda.
They have another-
I have one more item.
Get her name. Oh,
There's one.
No, we'll just wait until.
No, we're skipping the notice of intent.
I think you just have to announce that.
You have to announce
Okay.
it because
It's gonna be republished for the next meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna make a motion to table the notice of intent for 136 Denslow Road until the next meeting.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Was there one more thing?
For your truly.
Just 3D3 project monitoring, don't have anything, no building commissioner.
Because we don't have a building.
Yeah, but we
inspector,
could go there based on the fact that he's been cutting again.
right?
Do you wanna send a letter and ask for DEP or what?
He cut all the brush all along the brush.
All along the stream.
So you wanna make a site visit before the next meeting?
Yes,
Do you want him notified?
yes.
Do you have a date or in time?
When's the next meeting?
September 28th.
I think I can do that. Let me look.
I just do 5:30.
Yeah, can we just do it before it?
Like 5 PM?
Yeah, we'll do,
Well, cease and desist on further.
I think you already did it all.
Already cut off.
He already cut it all. He cut like the first 60 or 70 feet, it looks like.
Yeah,
Mike's thing?
like from where the,
He has no regard or respect for anything. He's just doing
No,
what
I
he wants.
Haven't, but I.
And he thinks he's getting away with it.
Do anything until we have new buildings, right?
well, no,
That's our, is that our
No, we
end?
don't need a building inspector.
not for the cutting.
I think, so then.
Can we get DEP then? Can we call them and?
Yeah, we can do that.
Apparently, they've already been up there. This is after.
Can you send him a letter, please, that we'd like a site visit on that, and to cease, you can put in there that you can cease and desist any and all work that has to
Okay, and,
close to the stream.
CC the DEP on that, if
Yes,
you can make
please.
it? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'd love for them to make it if they can, because we need their help on that one.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Where have you been hiding this whole time?
He was back there on the left, I saw him.
Will, you had mentioned it to him.
Yes, I did.
Again, no more work.
Hey, Mike,
You have to come to the
on the
board.
planning board also. Can he do an overlay of the current
Yeah.
site?
I'm not on the planning board anymore.
You just said you were.
I said I used to be.
Anybody here on the planning board?
No,
You gotta save your questions for the planning board for the.
yeah.
You're a lot of help too.
The
question I have-
You
the
can
question
send
I
me an
have-
email and I can forward it to the board, but they are not
Who's on
gonna
the planning
respond until they get back. I'm the director, but
Again, the board members can't speak on something unless it's a public hearing, so.
Okay. The question I have is, can you do an overlay of the current building, the proposed building? Because he's talking, these general issues.
I mean, that can be something raised with the applicant.
The west side,
Yeah, I know.
If you,
the west
I
side.
can talk to you after the meeting, there's.
One more thing.
Side is adjourned.
Yep.
Everybody might not
Okay.
know.
One more thing we have here is the certificate of compliance, right? Partial certificate of compliance for 14 Fairway Lane in East Long Meadow.
Sounds familiar.
We can read it into the thing.
Yeah.
What's that located?
All right. Are these all the same?
Yes, there's two to sign, one's the,
Okay, so this one is a request for partial certificate of compliance for 14 Fairway Lane, East Long Meadow, Mass.
Oh.
And the assessor's map 6-11, parcel 8.
I know.
On behalf of Michael Carabetta, 202 Allen Street, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
I know Michael Carter.
I know. Okay.
Make a motion to approve the partial certificate of compliance for 14 Fairway Lane, East Long Meadow, Mass.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd also,
Sign these two, right?
is everyone good? I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.